Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
Good night and good luck.
Hey folks, it's Rick Wilson. Welcome back to the Lincoln Project podcast. I am joined today by a friend of very long standing, a terrific American, a great patriot, and now the Democratic candidate in the lead in the Democratic primary for New York's 1st congressional district, a seat I am utterly confident he can pick up from the Republicans in November. John Avlon, he and I have known each other for a very long time, since the 1990s, the before times, as we like to say. And I want to welcome you, John, to the Lincoln Project podcast today. And thank you for coming on. And tell us about how you made the journey from writing to CNN and the Daily Beast, and then on to making this big commitment for yourself and your family, and to take on a political race at this moment in time. What was it that drove you to land where you landed in terms of taking on this challenge?
Donald Trump's third nomination for the Republicans.
That is a big factor for a lot of people.
It's all about the complete capture by Trump of the Republican Party and the threat it represents to our republic, from my perspective. Mm-hmm. You know, I write history books on the side. I've loved being a journalist and author and historian, most recently a CNN. But sure. I just thought this was an election that talking wasn't enough. I couldn't stomach just offering opinions on cable news about this election. I think this is the time where citizens need to step up, get in the arena, do what they can to make a difference, because we're defending our democracy and the opportunity in this election. I think that the patriotic opportunity is to form that broad coalition that you're so clearly a core part of, Brother Rick, which is, you know, what's left of the sane right, the center, and the left coming together to defend our democracy against something that is a unique threat to our country. And so for me, it's been invigorating and purposeful, and I feel a real sense of continuity.
John, before we zoom out again to the broader question, and I think you're exactly right. I think so many people, yourself included, have seen that there is a time now that we have to take action. We have to protect this democracy. It doesn't sustain itself. It requires people to engage. And I think that's something tremendously honorable about what you have done and the sacrifices you're making for yourself and for your family that are required in any political race. But I want to ask you a little bit about the kind of campaign you're running in the 1st district, so people understand that. I've been keeping a close eye on it, but I think it is something that a lot of Democrats could take a good lesson from on how to run, how to communicate, how to expand the base, how to get out there in the community and talk to people. Tell me a little bit about how you're running the 1st district race, and tell us a little bit about the district.
Sure. So I'm running as a common sense Democrat. Which to me means sort of being a liberal patriot, a pragmatic problem solver, someone who actually believes in the politics of the golden rule, playing offense, though, right? We believe, I think, and the vast majority of Americans believe in individual liberty, equal opportunity, generational responsibility. And we want to find common ground to pursue the common good. I've been thinking about how to define the space we're in and this time we're in, but it obviously particularly applies to a swing district. And you and I know, and I've written about this for decades. I mean, the poison in our politics stems from hyperpartisan polarization. I've been writing about it for years. The founding fathers warned about it. We have less than 20% of Americans who live in a swing district. And New York 1, here on Long Island in Suffolk County, is one of those districts. But Democrats were almost given up on it because the last couple of cycles have been rough. You know, held by Democrat Tim Bishop for 12 years, then Lee Zeldin for 8. Now we've got a first Trump Republican, Nick Lalotta, who's a Trump flunky kind of guy who celebrates overturning Roe and, mocks the bipartisan border deal. He's too far right for the district, but you need a Democrat who can fire up the base and then reach out and win over independents, of which, by the way, there are more registered independents in New York 1 than any other district in New York State. And I believe this election also offers us the opportunity to reach out and win over 10% of Republicans. People who voted Haley, Christie, who are persuadable if we reach out. We got to play offense to defend our democracy right now.
I think that's exactly right, and I think what you're describing here is there are probably 30 or 40 districts in the country that look a lot like New York 1, that have a center right, center left bias, not a gerrymandered to hell and back left or right bias. And so it makes it, I think it probably makes you as a candidate, have to do a campaign that is more traditional than a lot of people would think. It's not just media and digital. It's you're out there, and I mean, I follow your campaign. Like I said, you're out there knocking doors and doing community events and meeting real people in the district. So let me ask you this question: what has the sense been in the district in two ways? One, more broadly, like what is their big national take right now? What do they feel about the direction of the country, about the way that America is postured right now in this very consequential presidential race? And how are they feeling about their lives, their economy, the things that tend to end up driving a lot of election decisions in the end?
Sure. The number one issue I hear is frustrations around affordability. And that's obviously going to have a national element and a very local element. I think folks are frustrated that the cost at the grocery store, at restaurants, that's not going down. They hear good economic numbers, but they don't necessarily feel it in their pocketbook when they go to the store to buy the essentials. Housing is a huge issue on Suffolk County. I mean, you got the average cost of $700,000. The connecting factor is the middle class has felt squeezed and screwed for decades, and it's gotten worse, not better. And there's a frustration and a feeling that government does a great job looking out for the super rich and the big corporations, but not the little guy, not the small business.
Right.
One of the things that I've evolved on in my own thinking, I've been totally preoccupied with political reforms to heal our polarization. I increasingly believe it's not a coincidence that the middle of our politics got hollowed out when the middle of our economy got hollowed out. And so we need to think about ways to rebuild the middle class. There are concrete things we can do if Democrats control the House, because the Trump tax cuts are due to expire. New York, Trump and the Republicans raised our taxes by taking away the state and local tax deduction, which had been for a century. And as Senator Moynihan used to pay out, don't buy this BS. New York and other quote unquote blue states give more to the federal government than they get back.
100%.
And so this is an issue of fairness. And if you take an average family of four in Smithtown, let's say, dad's a plumber, mom's a teacher, two kids, they'd get almost, $4,000 back. And then we can extend the child tax credit. We did it for 1 year, cut childhood poverty in half. We need to make folks feel that democracy is working for them again. That's on the other side of the moral imperative of winning. You got to, and then when the fever breaks, we need to build a new kind of politics that can restore faith in democracy again. We need to take that piece of the puzzle as seriously as the first piece. But the first is essential, but not sufficient.
As long as I've known you, you have been a political independent, a classic political centrist, not a Republican, not a Democrat, an actual, legitimate, intellectually robust independent. I think there are some what I call lazy independents right now in the wind, the double hater types. They don't like Trump. They don't like Biden. They're like, maybe RFK is the solution. But you've actually got something going here as a common sense Democrat, as a center left Democrat, that I think is a pathway for the party to win back a lot of its losses in areas of the country, and not just New York 1. I think there is a pattern there where people are hungry for folks who are going to put aside things like, we're going to do bills about wokeism, we're going to do legislation about Hunter Biden's laptop, we're going to, all this showboating and posturing, and get back into, the hard and necessary work of being a legislator, of being somebody who represents a district, not a time slot on Fox News that night.
Right, not auditioning for a Fox contributor role. No, that is 100% the frustration that people feel, and that's the opportunity I think that we face. Look, people want candidates who can seize the center and solve problems, right? Not spun around the axle, playing defense, afraid of offending somebody on the far left or the far right in particular, which is a far greater threat to our country. But I got in the race. I left CNN in February, and I made the decision to take this step, and it was a long conversation with my wife about our two kids. But Tom Suozzi was special just a few days before, and I think was instructive. I mean, he reminded us that candidate quality matters, that seizing the center matters, playing offense on the issues people care about matter. That includes crime and immigration. Democrats sometimes get in this denial mode, and it sounds like they're, trying to gaslight voters who are concerned about these things. Play offense. Democrats are tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. But here's the fact: violent crime rose under Trump. It's fallen under Biden. But we need to make sure that Democrats stand with law enforcement, because people have a right to clean and safe streets, and public safety is a fundamental right, just like we have a right to a criminal justice system that's fair. So play offense on these issues. Immigration. I'm the grandson of immigrants. Immigration makes our country better, but we need more legal immigration and less illegal immigration. That shouldn't be complicated. It's actually good for the economy. And I think when Trump pulled the plug on the bipartisan border security bill, that was one of the things that led to Tom Suozzi's big win, because people got hip to the fact, and Nick Lota, the Trumper Republican, he piled on once Trump did this. He mocked the bipartisan border bill. But I think people realized, wait, you guys are fear-mongering about this. You're fundraising off it, but you don't actually want to fix it. And that's a firing offense to most folks. And I think that was a big Suozzi, and who, by the way, endorsed our campaign last week with Greg Meeks, Dan Goldman, a very big endorsement. And he and I see politics and policy in not dissimilar ways.
You've had a lot of, you're still in the primary, but you have racked up a slate of endorsements that is really impressive. That is really sending a clear signal, I think, that you're gonna be lined up with people who have represented this district and who have been known quantities in this district for a very long time. Nick LaLota is going to probably end up dragging in like the various mutant parade Trump family members and retainers and hangers on, right? He really doesn't seem to care about the district. From what I can read of the coverage, he seems to be one of these guys obsessed with, can I be on the Trump talking points bandwagon today? Right. So last week he spent the entire week basically saying, "Oh no, Donald Trump was railroaded. He's not a criminal." Right. Which, I don't know, call me crazy, but 12 members of a citizen jury looked at actual hard evidence on paper and said, yeah, he's a criminal 34 times. How is that playing out in the district, that he doesn't seem to have any connection to the district in terms of any giving a damn, but it's like the Fox News Donald Trump rinse and repeat every time I hear him talk.
Right. That's the essential issue. Yeah, that's the limp Nick defense. Well, when the president of my party breaks the law, we should be easy on criminals. Look, the same consistency across the board. Not that hard. Everybody gets it. If Bob Menendez is convicted by a jury of his peers, guess what? He should be held accountable. Not that hard. People. But I think Republicans are taking a real hit on issues of law and order, and they can talk it, they can sock puppet that talk. But when I went knocking on doors, this is a case, almost 2 months ago, I was knocking on doors in Smithtown. A guy, the FBI, registered independent, answered the doors. Wife was a Democrat, she was out, and the House had just proposed its budget, right? And he was pissed. He said, "Look, talk about defund the police. They're trying to cut us 6%. Right? That's going to hurt our ability to enforce the law." And that's the kind of offense Democrats need to play. Look, Nick LaLota doesn't even live in the district. He's the only member of Congress represented by another member of Congress. So between him and me, I'm the only one who can vote here. But he is one of those 18 Republicans who represent a district that Biden won, and he hugged Trump hard. He cheered the overturning of Roe v. Wade, thinks we should lower the age by the age of AR-15s. Never even held an in-person town hall. So I think play offense on these folks, and that's why it's important in this primary. I've gotten, I've been incredibly inspired, and I think people are fired up by the degree of endorsements, not just the members of Congress you said, and Steve Israel, former DP, came on board, but 6 of the 8 Democratic town committees, unprecedented in a primary. 2 members of the Assembly, my opponent has none. 3 members of the county legislature, my opponent has 1. My opponent's own union endorsed me, but it's crazy and wonderful, but that's the kind of people understand the stakes of this race. Now, she was the nominee in 2020. I voted for her, but she lost. She trailed Biden by a massive margin, but she's a self-funder. So she's coming at me. Republicans are coming at me, saying I'm a far left liberal.
You're a Marxist communist.
Which, by the way, again, it's you and I've been through this in the Trump years. Like being attacked by strangers saying crazy things doesn't exactly faze you. What's novel is being attacked from the left in this context.
Sure.
I think it's evidence you're doing something right in this district in particular. She's self-funding to the tune of $1 million, and which is an extraordinary display without any endorsements, and saying, "Oh, I'm not a real Democrat." Well, how come all the real Democrats are endorsing me? It's because they know I'm the candidate that can win in November and put this seat in play, and she can't. So, but it's a test of that kind of, the play to the base, burn it all down politics. Those who ruin if they can't rule attitude. But what a lot of folks are saying is, look, it's going to help inoculate in the general election because they're not going to convincingly be able to paint you as someone on the far left, which is what they tried and failed to do to Tom Suozzi as well.
Sure. They tried to make Tom Suozzi another center left, practical, common sense kind of Democrat. They tried to make him into, the woke radical leftist, blah, blah, whatever they pull out of their MAGA mad libs every day. So let me ask you another question. I'm going to broaden back out again. The stakes of this race, Democrats look like they're going to have a pretty good year in Congress, but this is a seat, and a number of other New York seats are very high on the list of places where Democrats really need to roll up the numbers. They really have to do well in these seats. Are you getting the help you need outside of are folks rallying to this cause because do they understand that this is one of the most vital races in the country? I guess is what I'm getting to.
I think they're seeing it, but there can always be more support because this has been a dark horse race. Part of the reason I got in, Rick, is that I kept seeing battleground maps of New York State.
Right.
And New York 1 was being left off. And again, I've got an interest. I was saying, what are you talking about?
You live there.
But this is mathematically a swing district. How come it's getting left off? And they said, well, and it had been Lee Zeldin's district before he ran for governor, so there wasn't as much campaigning here as there could have been in 2022.
Sure.
But I think people need to understand these are the stakes. This is one of those majority maker districts. If we win in New York 1, Democrats take the House. Hakeem Jeffries is speaker. And if, God forbid, Donald Trump sneaks in by losing the popular vote by 15, 20 million because of bad bounce the ball with third-party candidates in 3 or 4 swing states, Democrats holding the House of Representatives is going to be absolutely essential to the defense and survival of our democracy.
100%. I've told people this who are bemoaning, oh, we're not going to win the Senate. Mitch McConnell's got such a good map. And I'm like, look, the Senate matters right now, but the Senate matters here and the House matters way up here at the moment. That is the key firewall if Trump wins re-election by some
100%. And this is one of those districts that can make that happen. And Nicola Lota, I believe, is going to be seen as the most vulnerable of those freshman Republican because he hasn't done a good job connecting with the district, being on the ground, afraid to hold an in-person town hall. What's that? Do your job. Can't get a single bill passed, talks about SALT, can't do anything. Do your job. And so I think that's a message that we can win with. And I think candidates matter. Candidates who can fire people up and reach out beyond the base. That's what's required, ideally in American democracy, but especially in a swing district. So the stakes of this race are huge, and I hope people aren't sleeping on it. Because the implications of this are, Democrats need to reach out. Right, we got to stop this. You need those majority maker districts. You need the districts that are give you some room to roam. And this one, I think, will actually be among the most competitive come the fall, even more so than some of the ones that are conventionally wisdom considered competitive here in New York. So you can put that prediction in an envelope, and we can open it up in September.
I will be Karnak. Dating myself, everybody. Thanks, but here we are.
We can take a couple punk rock references to kind of loosen it up.
Exactly. So as this campaign has gone on, I want to go back to sort of where people's heads are at. Are you sensing with Republicans out there that what we call the Bannon line, those uncomfortable with Trump Republicans, we're seeing in other states, and full confession, we haven't been in the field in New York. It's just not one of our main areas we go. But we're seeing in other states that number of the Nikki Haley votes, the Chris Christie votes, the Never Trump votes. That number is moving in our numbers. It used to be 3 to 8%. Now it's like between 7 and 15%. Are you seeing that? Are you picking up that frustration with Trump among some of those Republicans who are maybe a little more moderate, a little more educated Republican types?
100%. And that's the opportunity in this election if we win the primary, because this is something where the right candidate can reach out to those Republicans. My wife, Margaret Hoover, hosts Firing Line on PBS. You know Margaret well. She's a Republican, not a Trumper. But, you put a bipartisan couple out there and you make these kinds of cases, against this backdrop, right? The Republican primary here happened during a monsoon. It had been over functionally.
Correct.
And in Suffolk County, Nikki Haley got over 14%, and Chris Christie got another 4.5%.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've got a receivable universe of between 15 and 20% of Republicans, but you need the right kind of candidate to reach out to them, and you need the right kind of arguments. Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, campaigning for Democrats. I've been to Democratic committee, not committee meetings, Democratic meetings in senior centers. I remember one in Ridge, New York, and they closed the meeting by quoting Liz Cheney. I'll also tell people something that might surprise them, and this is heartening to me. Democratic committee meetings here begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And that shouldn't surprise people, but sometimes it does. And this is why we need to take the flag back. Nobody gets to own the flag, but as a matter of fact,
correct,
we're in the patriotic cause. And when you reach out with Margaret and me together as a package with a Kinzinger and a Cheney and making this broad case and make this argument, I've done this to Republicans. You look on the North Shore, Northport, for example. Huntington, where it was an amazing community where Jack Kerouac used to live, but we'll do that detour.
We'll do our literary detour later.
This argument, right? Okay, if you're a Reagan Republican, Bush 41 Republican, let's go with the reasons you decided to be a Republican at that time. Well, maybe you believe we should stand up to Russian aggression. Well, Donald Trump doesn't believe that. Maybe you believe we should have a strong, muscular international foreign policy and leadership in the world. Well, that's not what Trumpism's about. Well, maybe you believe in fiscal responsibility. Well, he added $7 trillion to the debt before COVID, and not a single Republican stopped him. So throw that one out. Maybe free trade. How about 10% tariffs across the board against even our allies? All right, let's put that one aside. Law and order? Well, not only not trying to cut the DOJ, the FBI, and the ATF, but a convicted felon is your candidate, and who's surrounded by convicted felons from his cabinet and his campaigns in the past, and people promising to pardon people who attacked the U.S. Capitol. But character, family values, go down the line. The things that made those folks think of themselves as Republicans in the past are the opposite. Constitutional conservatism are the opposite of what Donald Trump represents. And they need to be woken up about that and the idea that we need to form a broad coalition, a common sense coalition that can recenter our country and start solving problems again. And there's also, of course, you talk a lot about the Dobbs dads and that impact and the impact on women, realizing that ideological crusade is led to the kind of dystopian outcomes that many of us were warning about. And I've been pro-choice as long as I can remember. This is one of my earliest political beliefs. People in New York might say, well, we're in New York, we're fine. A vote for a Republican this election is a vote for a man for speaker for whom a national abortion ban has been on his to-do list since day one.
Absolutely.
So, we see it with IVF, contraception, whether Trump musing maybe we should track women who are pregnant. This is a reality that we need to confront that, again, can help solidify that broad coalition. Sure. Of course, abroad, the trajectory implications of this for NATO, for Ukraine, for Taiwan could not be clearer. So those are the kind of playing offense arguments we need to make. And of course, for Israel as well, frankly, because, we need to be playing offense. The defining struggle of our time is democracy versus autocracy at home and abroad. And we need to form a muscular, broad coalition again to do it. And the Democratic Party is the only party that is acting on bipartisanship and trying to form a Big Ten.
Yep. I think that's exactly right, John. And I loved that articulation of this that you just did as a way to talk to Republicans. It summarizes the fundamental cognitive dissonance that these Republican objectors to Trumpism, as small as the number may seem on paper, it's growing. It is more decisive in a lot of ways than I've ever seen it before. Our research is starting to show a real hardening of those folks. And again, as I've told people for 4 years now, I am not trying to turn those Republicans into AOC progressives. I just want them to stand up and do the right thing and not allow somebody who's going to burn the republic to the ground to sit in the Oval Office for 5 more minutes of our life.
Not
because
on
he could do more damage in one day, even if he's only the one-day dictator. The Project 2025 guys and the Stephen Millers and the Steve Bannons and the Seb Gorkas and all this parade of people who have these ideas about how they want to break America's role in the world, how they want to break America at home. I think it is such a fundamental danger to this country that those people are feeling that objection more tangibly than I think they ever have before.
I agree with you. And I think it's important we play offense and really lean into this idea of the broad patriotic coalition to defend American democracy.
100%.
In the 21st century. And I think that's where, this race in New York 1 can be part of that puzzle. You need people who can play offense and articulate clearly the stakes of the race and shake people out of sort of that weird combination of exhaustion and feeling overwhelmed, and maybe the 34 count conviction helped wake some people up. But I keep saying, don't get numb to any of this. We've never had a major party nominee campaign on an authoritarian platform praising dictators. We've never had a lie be used as a litmus test of party loyalty successfully. This is sinister stuff. And yet it gives us the great opportunity to be that generation that rises up and rejects that kind of extremism by banding together. And then if we meet the moment with action, with a confident, optimistic sense of determination, we'll look back on this time with pride. That's
I think
opportunity we have.
And that's something I think Democrats have walked away from too many times. The signifiers of America, the love of the flag, the idea that despite our flawed beginning, there was nothing in the world then or now to rival the system that we have built and suffered for so many decades and 2 centuries now. There's nothing to rival that. There's no substitute for America. There's no backup America.
Nope.
And I think you're capturing that in this campaign in a way that again, I think for my Democratic friends and listeners, I really want to encourage you to follow this campaign. Learn more about John at johnavlon.com. Get involved if you want to get involved in this campaign, because it is I think an incredible exemplar of our country right now. You've got John as the Democratic leader in the field who is out there fighting with civility and aggression matched in a perfect tone. And you've got Nick LaLota, who is as much of a Trump dancing monkey clapping the cymbals back and forth as any of these people in the world. He's Marjorie Taylor Greene in a suit. And the whole thing strikes me as a district that's really important to watch and pay attention to.
We got to win the primary first.
Yeah, you do. Get on that. Well, folks, I want to thank John for coming on the show today. John, tell people where they can find you online and on social media.
Sure. At John Avlon on Twitter /X and Instagram, and at johnavlon.com is our campaign website. I'd be honored to have your support. We got to build a movement. This is part of what LP's been doing, and It's part of what we're doing. We're all part of the same good fight, and we need to be happy warriors to win.
God, I love it. John, I love you, brother. I will see you soon. Best of luck. Let me know what we can do here at LP. We'd love to have you back on soon, and go get them.
All right, brother. Will do.
See ya.
Good night and good luck.